Welcome to Heartbeats, a podcast series where we focus on the power of music beyond entertainment. I'm a TEDx speaker, professional filmmaker, music lover, and Heartbeats host, Michael Boydie. The mission of our show is to bring awareness to the power of music and sound. Science shows us when you shift the rhythms of the heart, you can affect how the heart and brain communicate, allowing you to feel more calm, balanced, and in tune. Our goal is to share research, scientific data, and inspirational stories from survivors, legendary musicians, DJs, sound healers, engineers, and those who can attest to the power of music. Today's theme, the emotion technique. Our guest, John Stuart. John is an expert in the field of vibrational therapy, a sound and music therapist, a certified couples counselor, and life coach. He is a sound alchemist, a facilitator of self-discovery, and the author of the book entitled, It All Begins With You. John's core healing modality is called the emotion technique.
My background is in vibrational medicine. What vibrational medicine is utilizing the vibration frequency energy. And I've been doing that for as far back as I can remember. I remember sitting there when I was younger, speaking the words, but making vibrations, making these sounds within my chest that would bring me to a state of peace, that would bring me to a state of harmony within my mind and within my body and my experience. That led to me being really deeply interested in sound. Interestingly enough, growing up, I always wanted to be a musician. I played a bunch of instruments and never really saw myself as a musician. I just couldn't quite grasp the concept of being a musician. I got irritated, if you will. I wanted nothing more than to be a musician. And I found myself then gravitating towards my voice to be able to facilitate a change in the world or within myself. I got into chorus and I was a singer. I saw the impact of how our voice and how sound at a vibrational level would be able to impact an audience. The tones and the frequencies and the voicings that they use and touch upon our emotions, just the power of the voice and how that could create emotional impact on us to either bring us to tears, or it could bring us overjoyed laughter, or it could bring us into that experiencing of sadness or potentially even pain within our body. Really interested in how sound impacted us at a physiological level and also on an emotional level, in particular emotional level. My studies then began to go on into, music therapy, and at that point, more geared towards the playing of guitar or piano towards people that were in assisted living facilities or that were troubled youth. Playing music would bring them to that space of harmony. So at that point, my journey into sound healing and music therapy began to really get peaked. And this was just after high school. So just after high school, I started, looking at ways to use music to facilitate healing. How could I do that? So the journey, actually, interestingly enough, as I was looking for schools to go to, I couldn't find anything that was really resonant with me. So I kind of, put it on the back burner, and I was taking notes, reading all the books that I could that were, on the topic and everything. But what really moved me was, at that time, it was the rave culture. And the rave culture at that time, peace, love, unity, respect was everything, and responsibility. When I first went to my first event there and I saw the DJ playing and how he was manipulating sound and manipulating the highs, the mids, the lows, and weaving, sounds in and out of each other, and seeing how the crowd responded and reacted to that was magical to me. I remember, just seeing a wave of people, the aura of energy that was there, and people coming alive. It was so potent. And at that point, I knew that the next step of my journey was to go on into being a DJ and getting into music production. So that's what I did at that time. Moving on from there, my journey continued to move forward. I went into schooling. So I wanted to understand the inner workings of sound and how the inner workings frequency, but I really wanted to get into the science of how sound was created. I also had studied holistic wellness and holistic care on various modalities of vibrational healing. My mission is to facilitate and to support the maximization of human potential.
That is incredible that you started that early and caught on to it. It took me a long time to actually realize like how you can manipulate our energy field with sound. But I knew I was always feeling good for music because sometimes until you actually have that experience or you've been around that experience, it really does seem kind of magical. And I guess it is in a sense because it's all vibration and
Yeah.
vibration. I've learned over and over again is there's not one modality that works for one person in
Yes.
particular. It's like sound does heal, but you're going to have to do a whole different types of healing that are involved with your diet, your exercise, your sleep, your general day-to-day things that include having good energy around you, and those energies include sounds.
Absolutely. I mean, you really nailed it. I mean, one of the most important things I feel is integrative care. And, a lot of people in the holistic community will poo poo on allopathic care, though allopathic care is there for a very distinct purpose. And one of the most beautiful things that has come out of that is diagnosis. Going to see your primary care physician or your doctor, your specialist, whomever it is, that diagnosis then allows us to be able to have a platform to be able to grow on and implement a holistic practice. That's really where I come from. The mind, body, spirit, sound is because we have to have the mental acuity. We have to be able to have the physical strength and the spiritual integrity and also the emotional awareness to be able to achieve the whole health and harmonious and sustainable way of living that we wish to experience.
Yeah, I learned when you peel back the onion, there's a lot of different elements to it, right? It's not just
Yeah.
like the more you apply in all different areas, the better results you're going to have. Um, with your background, credentials, and experience, can you share some of the scientific data you've acquired while doing the practices and the work you've been doing?
So it's interesting. In my practice, I really don't go into the scientific data in my practice, if you will. A lot of my clients will share their experience, but I don't have any qualitative data that I've personally collected. I will share a few things with you, though, from my clients. One of the most recent ones is at the sound experience that I offer, and that's an event of where it's a guided meditation utilizing different solfeggio frequencies, isochronic tones, binaural beats, that will help facilitate the loosening or the awareness of whatever that particular energetic is, meaning, the topic. So, for example, this last one was about purpose, our inner purpose. She had measured her insulin prior to the sound experience. It was at 287, and then immediately after is at 127. For diabetics, we're looking to get away from being dependent upon injecting ourselves with drugs, essentially. So this is the second time with the sound experience of where she's reported lower levels of insulin immediately after being in the sound experience. I'm just a conduit. I go on a journey within, tap in to predominantly their emotions, then we are going to be able to have better results in every aspect of our life, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. I do come from less of a scholastic viewpoint and more from an experiential. The rewards that they have been able to witness in their own life, that's really where it's at for me.
I get it because experiences like that, it just changes your whole perspective on everything. And it's really seeing things from a different perspective from that point on. You can't unlearn something, so you get it. You all of a sudden now just want to share that with everybody.
Music therapy or sound healing or vibrational medicine, all of that is, like we were saying before, woo woo, or it's a placebo effect. And what I say to that is if it's a placebo effect that happens to be working, then that's pretty amazing. And What a gift that is. If a placebo effect is working, let's continue that and let's continue to study it. Let's continue to understand it and invite that in rather than suppressing it and repressing or pushing something away that might be able to facilitate what it is that we wish to experience.
Could you walk me through what it's like, facilitate one of your experiences with one of your clients? Can you walk me through that?
What I utilize is something that's called the emotion technique. And essentially the emotion technique, when a client comes in, typically whatever the reason, or whether it is a traumatic experience, what we'll do is we'll bring that awareness, if you will, because it's in the mind, it's vibrational output within our body. And those thoughts are then generating either forms of stress or strain within our body. Through the technique and through unwinding that, what we'll do is we'll find a place within the body of where that constriction is. And once we find where in the body that constriction is, we'll go through a process of where we will then dial into the particular energetic. So, for example, let's say that I'm guiding them through experiences not steeped in story. So, for example, let's say somebody suffered from a form of child abuse, right? We are not going to remain steeped in the story of I was abused. What we're going to do is we're going to dial into what it felt like. What is the feeling tone? What is the vibrational frequency? What are the words that we can really get into of where when we communicate from a vibrational experience, our whole body begins to vibrate in that frequency, in that feeling tone, right? So let's say we get into the fundamental emotion, we'll just say loneliness or fear, whatever it might be. When we get into that baseline fundamental emotion of where it's rooted in, and what we'll do is we go back experience starting from today, then going back and then back, and creating this lineage, if you will, of experiences throughout our lifetime that are all very much aligned with that same feeling tone. And then we begin to see that pattern, if you will, of where we remain caught up in that loop. And then going back, and we go back as far as we can, as far as we can. And for some people, that might even be a previous life, if you will. We go back to the first recollection of where we felt that vibrational frequency, and then we dial into that, and then we go through a process of where we will transmute that, of where we will recognize that at that moment that wasn't ours. We didn't initiate that. We didn't create that. That was essentially imprinted upon us in our psyche. That is not necessarily ours. That vibrational frequency was imprinted upon us, that has created essentially this neural pathway in this loop of continuing the same thing over and over throughout our period of life, that has kept us in this constricted thought process. Then we understand is that at that point, it's not ours to hold on to. What does that actually feel like? What does that feel like to recognize that this is no longer ours to hold on to, that we actually have this choice to be able to create a different experience from a vibrational level by consciously being aware of what it is that we are choosing to experience, recognizing that that emotion that I've been carrying that this entire time has impacted me on so many levels, that I've been carrying something that isn't mine to hold on to. What does that feel like? What a relief that is. What a letting go of a burden that I no longer need to hold on to, and recognize that constricted energy, that tension, that strain that is now impacting us at a physical level and creating dis-ease or illness. It's a proven fact that up to 80%, up to 85% of illness and disease is attributed to stress from events that have impacted us over a period of time. So then from that point, when we begin to walk through that process and recognize that a lot of these events that have happened leading all the way back up into this present moment are not ours to hold on to, that we have the choice to experience joy, to experience liberation. We have the choice to experience heart-centered love. We have to be able to receive others or without fear, because it begins to unwind the emotional constriction and trauma that a lot of people really don't realize, especially in repeated traumatic events over a period of time, of how they impact us in the present day and holding us back from achieving our optimal experience in this lifetime.
What would you say a majority of your clientele is?
I have dealt a lot with suicide, dealt a lot with addiction, dealt a lot with abuse as well. Music therapy, sound healing, vibrational medicine is a level of efficacy as other allopathic care or traditional methods of application for healing, is that it's in that moment, right? We'll feel good in that moment. And then one of the key components there is I ask some questions is, what is your overall health and wellness goal? And there, session, we'll do the emotion technique, sound healing, whatever it is that's being called forward, though it's really the integrative health. What do you do the other 23 hours of your day, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I provide them this profile, and it has a list of suggestions, recommendations, and then things that I would really, really highly suggest implementing almost immediately.
That's amazing. Do they come to a clinic, a shop that you have, or where do you usually meet?
I mean, as of right now, with the current situation, it's a little different. I actually started with doing remote sessions online. So I do have a center that I am partners with. Wonderful man Eric Swenson runs Dreams Life and Wellness Center here in Waukesha, Wisconsin. I was the co-director there for a while. Now I'm primarily focusing on my own practice.
Do you implement any sort of sound technologies or devices or tools, in your practice?
What I'll use is various frequencies. Isochronic tones are isolated frequencies that are pulsed, and I'll utilize those, or binaural beats, which is utilizing two frequencies that are different, one in your left ear and one in your right ear, which then meet in the middle and create a resonant frequency in the center. And various frequencies will facilitate different levels of healing response, facilitating deeper meditation, allowing for the relaxation response to also facilitate healing. It depends upon what the client is dialing into. For example, if someone is suffering from shyness, of where they're not able to speak up for themselves, of where their throat is restricted, if you will, and they're not able to voice what it is that is really, really wanting to come forward. So what we'll use is different sounds to accentuate that will elicit the response of what it is that we are looking for. And sometimes those sounds are not so pleasant. There's some tones that will definitely generate some feelings that may not be pleasant, but they do facilitate the healing response or activate what it is that the client is looking for in their journey of self-discovery. It's definitely one of those things where a lot of people will come to me, and this wasn't what I experienced. I thought it was going to be a guided meditation. I thought it was going to be all nice and fluffy, it was going to be all relaxed. Yes, and if we're really looking to push through things, the whole essence of vibrational medicine for me is to loosen, right? Is to loosen wherever that constriction is. Or the other aspect is amplifying what it is that might be needing to come to the surface.
Are there certain mentors or pioneers that you've looked up to in this industry that you've been following in your studies since you were young?
Wow. The gentleman that was on your first podcast, Jonathan Goldman, he's in pretty much every single sound experience that I've created. His music has been the most enriching aspects in terms of healing. He has been such a gift to my practice, a wonderful, wonderful man who has such a passion for providing sound healing to this world. And his studies have just been absolutely influential. Though I will say probably the number one most influential individual has been Dr. Richard Gerber, who wrote the book Vibrational Medicine. The most important part of my practice, once again, is integrative care. He's a medical doctor that really has done such, he's unfortunately no longer with us. The work that he has done and the research that he has done on so many different modalities of where we're using vibration, sound, and music to facilitate healing. His work is top notch.
How over the years has sound and the study of sound healing changed since you first began your education? And in that question, how has the science aspect of the field advanced over this time? Because I know a lot of technology and quantum physics has helped us now be able to molecularly see the changes and the things happening. In your studies, how have things changed over the years?
So when I started doing research of how am I going to become involved in this, like I said, at that time, really most of the music therapy schools or information that I was coming up with was primarily of playing piano and guitar to the elderly or to the younger population that were in vegetative states or in troubled youth. Those were primarily the groups that were targeted in music therapy. I began to find people like Dr. Richard Gerber, began to find people like Dr. Jeffrey Thompson and Jonathan Goldman and these, people that were essentially pioneers in this. When I first started, 25 years ago now, it was primarily using music. I was just playing music. And there wasn't a lot that I was finding at that time. I didn't have a group of individuals that I was able to connect with. So really, as we were saying at the beginning, the internet was my main resource. I'd go to libraries also and try to find as much information, though there really wasn't as much at that time. And I would say the book that really opened my awareness was a book called The Cosmic Octave. He was able to draw comparisons between all of the frequencies, the studies of how that would impact various parts of healing. And when I read that, it's been just this rabbit hole. So the information just kept on coming and coming and coming. And it's one of those things of where, synchronicity has its way with us and begins to show up one experience after another. So, the rabbit hole just kept on leading me from the next to the next and recognizing that quite honestly, a lot of these studies have been around for a long time. They've just been suppressed or they've been out of the populace, the mass populace. Most of the information that is out there is about allopathic care, pharmaceuticals, or surgical operations to facilitate healing or disease or illness. So it's definitely shifted over the years because, like you said, with the internet, it's really allowed for this information to become more readily available. And then, having these groups come together on the internet of where we're sharing this information. And it's really been this organic evolution of just becoming more and more aware of information that has always been there. It's just becoming more and more aware of it.
We now have the technologies and the internet and ways to share the science aspects of what we've learned from vibration and
Yeah.
healing energy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the technology is there, like the field of somatics, of where we're able to now be able to see sound. I mean, that's huge to be able to see the impact and the patternings of sound, like Dr. Emoto with the crystalline structure of, just vocalizing words to water or placing a written word on a bottle of water and seeing how that impacts the structure, the crystalline structure of water. The field of somatics is definitely one that is pioneering a lot of what we are seeing because a lot of people won't believe it until they see it.
It's so true. And cymatics is a big part of Heartbeat. You wrote a book. It's called It All Begins With You. Can you summarize that a little bit for us and what this is all about?
So, the book, it was, for me, again, the healing journey really begins within. So personal responsibility and accountability for me is where healing begins to unfold. The principles of healing are, for me, once we begin to take accountability and responsibility for our life and for how we navigate that and how we apply the information or the knowledge that comes to us, it only becomes wisdom when we apply it. The whole beginning of that began with what was called the daily dose. I was working this job. Every morning I would write an email to let people know that coffee was ready, because the coffee that was in the break room was not very good. So I made sure to get really good coffee, and I brought in a coffee machine and had creamer. There was like my own little coffee shop. And and it started off, I just sent people a message with a quote in it and letting them know that the coffee was ready. And that then began to expand into this very long email with tips and resources on how to live a more harmonious life. What I did is I locked myself in a hotel at the Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs, and I spread out all of my writings from the previous 10 to 15 years. I knew what all of the chapters were going to be, so I just wrote 1 through 11 on each of my little writings. So I had all of these writings with numbers 1 through 11, kind of pieced them all together. Essentially, that's how the book was written. And like I say, it's a love song for myself. It's my own personal Bible, if you will. It's a reminder for me on my journey of what it was that was allowing me to be the best version of myself, what those teachings were, what those experiences were. And I don't have any story in there. It's more of a cerebral read. You could pick it up at any page and you could read a paragraph and meditate on it. Or you could read the whole entire book within probably about 2 to 3 hours and be done with it. Though it really is written for us to feel deeper into and ask ourselves some of those hard questions, and not externalizing our experience, not looking out there. So once we begin to put our healing, our well-being, our happiness, our joy, whatever it is that we wish to experience in something outside of us, then we no longer have responsibility to ourselves. And it's very easy for us to point fingers. It was a book to remind me of hard questions for others and offer some insight into how we can be more harmonious within. Harmony within, harmony throughout. As within, so throughout.
I like books that you could just kind of pick up sometimes and not read the whole thing right away. So it's nice. And you can just, well, can you describe to me your most personal and powerful moment where sound transpired into a very profound healing experience for you?
So my son, who's now 12, he had more energy than anything that I have ever witnessed before. And to the point of where we began to question, after a while, because there were seemingly, just violent episodes. My former partner and I, why is he behaving this way? We definitely did not want to put him on any medication. We didn't want to, go down the traditional route when we had moved up to Wisconsin, when it really began to amplify. And when he went to school in 4K, he was able to assimilate into school fairly well for the beginning, though very quickly thereafter, his defiance began to take hold, and they had recommended to us that we should take him, to a doctor. We should, have him on medication, looking at alternatives and options, or else, they may have to ask him to go into another form of education outside of traditional means. So we went into something that was called parent-centered interactive therapy, which is really getting the parents to listen to the child and to be able to understand where the child is, rather than telling the child that they're bad or they're not good, or corrective behavior and constantly putting them down, for make them feel bad about something that they may not have control over or they don't understand, especially at that age. That fed right into my own studies of sound and utilizing our voice to be able to facilitate healing. And that's, one of the things that I always navigated with him. So that fed right into my own studies of utilizing our voice to be able to facilitate healing. He was on the autism spectrum, which was making a lot of sense. Though after the studies and tests and all of that, it came back that he was not on the autism spectrum, but he had something called oppositional defiance disorder, which is basically another way of saying, I'm not listening to anything you're saying, and I'm going to push back on everything, and I'm going to do whatever I want, and I'm going to make it known. And he definitely was that way. It was inviting him to how he was communicating about his experience and how he was communicating, what he was communicating to others. So using his own power of sound, his own voice to be able to articulate what is going on within, what it is that he needs at that moment, and what he's actually feeling, even if he doesn't understand it, to be able to share that so that others might be able to have a little bit more compassion or be able to have a way to be able to navigate the experience with him. And being almost kicked out of school to the 2.5 years later, he was now becoming one of the leaders of his school. He was involved in student council. He's involved in Buddies, which is assisting others with mental disorders. To see where he is now, he has become a leader. He is able to articulate what is going on. He knows when to slow down. He knows when to take a break. He knows how to be able to communicate what his needs are, and has been able to modify his behavior because of the level of awareness that he has. To witness that transmutation and transformation on a mental and emotional level is the most rewarding, gratifying experience that a human could ever ask for and a parent could ever be proud of, because he's taken it on his own.
If you would like to learn more about John Stuart, set up a remote healing session, or if you're in need of a life coach, please visit amplifyyourlove.com or dreamslifeandwellnesscenter.com/healing. Our mission is to bring awareness and attention to the healing power of music. Our goal is to inspire, educate, and provide a platform for research, ideas, and real-life experiences involving sound and music. To learn more about our upcoming documentary, Heartbeat, please visit heartbeatdocumentary.com or heartbeatthefilm.com. Subscribe and you'll stay up to date on the progress of our film.